धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः. Revered Swami Prabhanandaji Maharaj, the learned speakers sitting on the dais, sisters, brothers, dear friends. I am extremely happy to be here this morning. At the outset, I express my gratitude to revered Swami Brahmasthanaji Maharaj for giving me this opportunity of witnessing a wonderful presence of Sri Ramakrishna yesterday when the temple dedication ceremony was going on, and when the devotees and monks were rejoicing over the temple dedication ceremony, we could get a glimpse of what a mart of joy would have been created when Sri Ramakrishna himself was there and was dancing. I am grateful to him for giving me this opportunity, also for giving my views on Hinduism, a very difficult task, because Hinduism is such a vast religion. It is coming from time immemorial. Another name of Hinduism is Sanatan Dharma, eternal religion. Later on, this has been termed as Hinduism because it has come from the word Hindu, and this is again adopted from the Persian adaptation of the word Sindhu. The people living near Sindhu river, they were called, from Sindhu it became Hindu, and from Hindu it has become Hinduism. But really speaking, it is eternal religion, Sanatan Dharma. It is coming from time immemorial, we do not know, prehistoric times. And this is the oldest religion of the world that is surviving today, and the third largest religion. And today about 837 million people are officially Hindus, but unofficially the figure would be very large. On that point I would come later. So 13% of world's population at present are Hindus. Curiously enough, Hinduism does not have a single founder, not a specific theological system, not a single system of morality. There are so many systems. Not a central religious organization. And without any single system or any single central organization, when Kumbh Melas are held, millions of sadhus, they arrive without any invitation card. That's a very curious phenomenon. No invitation card is needed. It's going on. How it is going on, we do not know. That is Hindu religion. Most importantly, it is democratic in nature. Mark Twain, the humorist, has given some very interesting remarks. Compared to India, all the other countries are paupers. India alone claim to be a millionaire country having millions of gods and goddesses. But then it is not polytheism or not idolatry. When a Hindu worships an image, he doesn't say that, "Oh stone, I worship you," as has been explained by Swami Vivekananda. So the only thing is that Hinduism gives freedom to each and every human being to worship his or her own Ishta Devata or Ishta Devi. That freedom, and that is why Mohammad Dawood Rahbar, a professor of Boston University, says in the book written by Claude Allen Stark, God of All, which is a book on Sri Ramakrishna, where Mohammad Rahbar says, in this democratic age, Hinduism appears to be a very democratic religion, particularly its philosophy of Vedanta, which does not go for an autocratic God. So we will become more and more outdated if we do not adopt this democratic pattern of the Vedanta philosophy. That is what Muhammad Rahbar says. And Francis J. Clooney says, by studying the life and teachings of Sri Ramakrishna, we will become a better Christian. A Christian can become a better Christian, a Muslim can become a better Muslim. That Sri Ramakrishna is the finest and the last product of Hinduism. We will see, if time permits, about how galaxies of saints have been produced by Hinduism. It is the most tolerant of all religions in the world history. It has never gone to attack any other religion or any other country. Thousands of years of history, but not a single occasion when we find India invading other countries, least of all for the reason of religion. And there is no proselytization as in other religions. Not only that, it almost indirectly allows its own people to be proselytized, as it were, because it is so democratic in nature, it is so tolerant that people do not feel when they move over, when they get converted, they do not feel. It is so tolerant. Now, but even with all that, at present, statistically speaking, 13% of the people are Hindus, but then many more have adopted the Hindu ways, have adopted the tenets of Hindu religion without changing their names or without changing their faith. And Hinduism does not want that you should change your faith. We only want a Christian to be better Christian, a Hindu to be a Muslim to be better Muslim. And if you take in that light, millions of other people in various parts of countries are Hindus. On 4th of August 2003, there was a special article carried by Time magazine, and the long article's name was Just Say Om. And inside that, the story was given in details. 10 millions of Americans are now regularly meditating in America. 10 millions of people. There was a news item, Americans going gaga over yoga. 75% of fitness clubs are having compulsory subject of yoga. 92 out of 125 medical schools in the United States are having compulsory subject of alternate medicine, containing various other subjects including yoga and meditation. Year before last, when I went to UK and other countries of Europe, there I was told by Vivekananda Center. Vivekananda Center is holding annually examinations on Hinduism. Hinduism is a compulsory subject in the schools of UK, one of the compulsory subjects as a part of comparative religion, and the children and the students of UK, not only Indian, but even the English children, they are having so much fascination for Hinduism that thousands of students are appearing for the examination on Hinduism conducted by Vivekananda Center. While I was coming from Switzerland to India, at Zurich airport, I found a board, meditation chamber. Meditation chambers are opening on airports, railway stations, boardrooms, schools, colleges, everywhere. Meditation and yoga is now entering. The new form of Hinduism, the revised form of Hinduism, revitalized after the incarnation, you know, the theory of incarnation is there in Hinduism. Sometimes in the competition you get virus. So you have to feed antivirus program. So automatically the antivirus program will remove the virus. Hinduism got a peculiar system of this virus removal program. Whenever there is an attack from outside or inside, when there is degradation, automatically there is a refining system and saints appear, galaxy of saints have appeared from time to time to revitalize and have the cleaning process of Hinduism. And sometimes God himself comes, as Sri Krishna told us in the Gita, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyuthanam adharmasya tadatmanam sujamyaham paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma sansthapanarthaya sambhavami yuga yuga. I incarnate myself time and again And the same Godhead comes in the form of Ramakrishna, and the latest incarnation is Sri Ramakrishna, who revitalized the whole system. And the latest invasion was from the Western materialistic culture, being in the British government. Being in the British government, the capital of British government was Calcutta. So in an obscure village near Calcutta he was born, and in 1836 Lord Macaulay planned a new education policy. In 1839 he writes to his father, that letter has now come to light, where he writes to his father, "Father, I have introduced a system of education. No Hindu who has received English education ever remains attached to his religion." And that was his challenge, and that exactly happened. The students undergoing the system of education became rebellious against Hinduism and against all forms of so-called idolatry. They denounced it like others. At that time was born Sri Ramakrishna, and he refused to undergo this present system of education. He never went to the school. And then at his feet sat the best product of the modern education of Presidency College, a young person who had read Kant, Hegel, Spencer, all Western thinkers, and had become agnostic. He said, "I don't believe in God. List of all in your these idols, this Kali you tell is a stone image. I don't believe. Have you seen God?" That is a challenge he posed. It was a challenge from the Western culture to the Eastern civilization. It was a challenge from the West to the East. It was a challenge from the modern to the ancient. And Sri Ramakrishna said, of all the saints, Sri Ramakrishna gave the satisfactory reply to Narendranath Dutt, who later became Swami Vivekananda. "Yes, my boy, I have seen God. Not only that I have seen Him, I am seeing Him more intensely than I am seeing you." Not only that, he said, "If you want, you can also see Him, but you will have to undergo the system of sadhana." That is the science of religion. H2 plus O2 is equal to H2. I don't believe. It's not a question of belief. Come to the laboratory, have hydrolytic process, mix hydrogen, oxygen, and when you don't get water, then you say, "I don't believe." So Hinduism gives a scientific proof. What is the proof? There is no proof. You yourself get the proof in the laboratory, but you have to come to the laboratory. Sri Ramakrishna says, "I have realized God." You also can realize God, but you will have to come to the laboratory. Sadhana, you have to perform spiritual practices. Narendranath accepts that challenge. He undergoes sadhana. He realizes God, and that is why, after realization of God, he could declare in the Chicago Parliament of Religions in 1893, "Shudvantu vishve amritasya putra aye dhamani divyani tastuh vedahametam purusham mahantam aditya varnam tamasa parastat tamev vidityati mrityameti nanya pantha viditenaya." I have found the ancient one is beyond all miseries. By knowing Him alone, he shall be free from all miseries. He could say that because of his realization. And that he learned at the feet of Sri Ramakrishna, who never went to any school, the present system of education. So then, Hinduism is very liberal, democratic in nature. To give just a panoramic view, in a nutshell, there are 4 Vedas which are the foundation of that Hinduism. Basically, there are 2 types of scriptures, Shruti and Smriti. Shruti are called Apaurushaya, that means they are revealed, not written by any particular human being. We cannot ascribe any particular author to these Vedas. They are Apaurushaya. They are revealed by seers, to the seers. And these Vedas are Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samaveda and Atharvaveda. And Smriti contains Puranas, Itihasas. It also, and Ramayana, Mahabharata, they all form part of it. Gita, being a part of Mahabharata, is also called Smriti, but then it holds a superior position as far as the practical considerations are there. It is considered more than the Shruti. In fact, Prasthantra is given a lot of importance when the various followers, there are thousands of sects in Hinduism, and all of them, they give importance to Prasthanatra, that is Brahma Sutra, Upanishad and Gita. Upanishad is nothing but the last part of Vedanta, Vedanta, the last end part of Vedas are called, and that is the Jnana Kanda part of it, that is the knowledge part of it. The other one is the Karma Kanda, the sacrificial part of it. And there are 6 philosophies, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Yoga, Mimamsika and Vedanta of Badarayana Vyasa, and the Vedanta of Badarayana Vyasa holds the superior position. Again there are 3 divisions, Advaita, Dvaita and Vishishtadvaita. And there are 4 Purusharthas that a Hindu tries to follow, is supposed to follow: Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha. Moksha, Mukti, liberation is the final goal of life, and this is to be attained by enjoying the world, by accumulation of money, artha, and also pleasures, but in a righteous way, in such a way so that it leads to liberation. And there are 4 ashramas, 4 stages of life: Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha and Sannyasa. The student life, the life of a householder, the life of a partial retirement, and then the final life of a monk. Then 4 varnas depending on the division of labor, which has lost its importance speaking in the modern age. Then there is a theory of reincarnation, which is accepted by all the various sects of Hinduism. Theory of reincarnation and theory of karma. Theory of reincarnation, that is, a soul is reborn, and after death again it takes birth. The soul goes on getting rebirth, unless and as long as it has not achieved, the soul has not achieved the final goal of emancipation of mukti. And the law of karma states, as you sow, so you reap, and your rebirth is also being decided by the types of karmas that you have done. So now coming to the basics of Vedanta philosophy, only 2 things to make it simple I will say. Vedanta, if you give the gist, Swami Vivekananda has given the gist of Vedanta beautifully in his introduction to Raj Yoga. Each soul is potentially divine. The goal of human life is to manifest this divinity within by controlling nature, external and internal. Do this either by work, worship, psychic control or philosophy, by one or more or all of these, and be free. This is the whole of religion. Dogmas, rituals, worships, temples, churches, mosques are but secondary details. He has given the gist of this Vedanta. That is, number 1 is the divinity of the soul, and second is the solidarity of the whole universe. Says the Kathopanishad, Esha sarveshu bhuteshu gudo atmana prakashate drishyate tvagraya buddhya shukshmaya shukshma buddhi. Inside each and every human being is Atman, the center of consciousness. And what is the proof? The proof is that it is hidden, but the proof is that some people have seen it. That is the proof of it. Esha sarveshu bhuteshu. And Godo Atmana Prakashate. And then, depending on that, based on that, Swami Vivekananda has given his philosophy, his philosophy, practical Vedanta. He says, if you practice this Vedanta in everyday life, it will be of immense help. What he said, that we had degradation in our society because we forgot to apply this Vedanta in everyday life. By the application of this Vedanta, a fisherman will become a better fisherman, a student will become a better student, a teacher will become a better teacher, a manager will become a better manager. How? By application of this Vedanta. When he or she thinks that he or she is not a tiny human being or a psychophysical entity, but inside that entity is a soul, the Atman, having infinite potentiality, having infinite power, which is birthless, deathless, ever pure, ever blissful, which is not being cut to pieces by the sword, which is not melted by water, which cannot be melted away by air, by water, which cannot be blown up by air, which cannot be burnt by fire, birthless, deathless, without being cut to pieces, even with the best of the swords. Nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavakaha, na chainam kledentyapo, na shoshati maruta, achedyoyam, adayoyam, akledyo, ashoshevacha, nitya sarvagata sthanur, achaloyam sanatana. That is the immortal self. That is the real nature of every human being. And that is how Swami Vivekananda made a call in the Chicago Parliament Religions. Ye, the children of immortal bliss, holy and perfect beings, ye divinities are sinners, it is a sin to call a man so. It is a standing libel on human nature. Come up, all lions, and shake up the delusion that you are sheep. Your soul is immortal, spirits free, blessed and eternal. Matter is the servant, not ye, the servant of matter. That is the message of Vedanta rolled out by Swami Vivekananda in the Chicago Parliament Religions. That is the divinity of the soul. And the second part of it is the solidarity of the whole universe, where it says the whole reality, the same supreme reality is permeating the whole universe. Isha vasyamidam sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagat tena tektena bhunjitha ma vridakasya siddhanam. That supreme consciousness is permeating the whole universe, the same reality. And so what do? Enjoy the world. How? By renunciation. How can you enjoy the world by renunciation? You have to renounce only the ownership part of it. The seeds of trusteeship management, which is becoming a very important phenomenon. Azim Premji was asked by the India Today, he was interviewed. The secret of success, he said, I tried to practice trusteeship management principle which was advocated by Gandhiji. But long before Gandhiji advocated it, Swami Vivekananda had told this principle to John D. Rockefeller, the richest person in the world at that time, in 1894 when he was in America, and that had saved the life of Rockefeller. And later on, Bill Gates, through the books of Swami Vivekananda, is now trying to practice this principle of trusteeship management, declaring that apart from $10 million of his total wealth, which is in billions of dollars, will be giving for the charitable purposes. These seeds of this trusteeship management is also in this second principle of the solidarity of the whole universe. And based on this holistic, this whole world is one. Now the modern science has proved it. That is why Schrödinger says, consciousness is a singular of which the plural is unknown. And Bell's theorem that all the particles of the whole universe are interconnected at a deeper level has been now verified by another Nobel Prize physicist, David Bohm. That is how the modern science, what Swami Vivekananda said, that the modern discoveries of science seems like echoes of the principles given in Vedanta, in Hinduism, is coming true. So, coming to an end, we have only just given a panoramic view of the Vedanta philosophy of Hinduism. I end with a quotation from Sri Ramakrishna. In the Gospel we find Sri Ramakrishna says, the eternal religion, the religion of the rishis, has been in existence from time out of mind and will exist eternally. There exist in this Sanatana Dharma all forms of worship, worship of God with form and worship of the impersonal deity as well. It contains all paths, the path of knowledge, the path of devotion, and so on. The Hindu religion alone is the Sanatana Dharma. The Hindu religion has always existed and will always exist. Thank you.